Welcome to the channel. In this video, we're going to talk a little bit about CleanSpark and Bitcoin. We're going to talk about the daily chart, the weekly chart. We'll also take a look at the open options interest for CleanSpark, not for Bitcoin though. And then we'll talk about price targets on both of them, talk about when I'm going to add, when I'm going to trim. We'll have a quick look at some news. I don't think there's too much news out whilst I was away, so we'll talk about some other topics if there's no news available, and we'll take a quick look at what's coming up on the macro calendar. Other than that, you can check out my live portfolio over on eToro. The link for that is in the description down below. I'm just going to check up my portfolio progress for year to date here. Okay, so jumping straight in, we need to talk about the CleanSpark halt. We had a T12 halt. We'll talk more in detail about it in the kind of news section of this, but just really wanted to say that it sucks the timing of this. We're missing out on so much pump, and it is my largest position in my portfolio. I don't think in the long term that's really going to make much of a difference, but it will make up for it. It'll be a laggard, and then it will have a bigger move when Bitcoin pops again. If by the time we do resume trading and there is a pullback, we likely share in the downside, but I will be buying that dip aggressively. Okay, so that's out of the way. I want to talk more about the price action in the short term. So I've done my new updated squiggle of price action. Now this, I don't know if this is going to work out as I envisioned because of this trading halt. I really don't know how that's going to affect. We could have some FOMO rushing in. We could have some people taking the news as bearish. So we could have a drop. We have to wait and see how that plays out. I also don't know how long the halt will last. Trading could resume at the bell, but T12s can take days, weeks, and months in some occasions. But given the driving factor of this halt, I think it's just going to be days. The paperwork was submitted Friday, so we'll see how that affects the stock and the timelines on that. But I don't think it should be too long. Certainly not weeks and months. I think that would be crazy if that happened. But price here, the next resistance level is the kind of $15 range. And then we have this huge volume shelf. I would expect us to have some resistance there. It is also the completion of the measured move from the yellow pattern on this page. So some pullback there is probably warranted and quite likely. For me though, I'm more likely to take off some risk at the kind of $18 range. I added quite a lot down here and here, so I'm probably going to be getting quite overweight at that point from the lows here. If we get to there, that's a 124% move, so my weighting is going to be large by then, so I'm going to need to take some off. So that's kind of the levels I'm looking at to do that. To the downside though, if we do join in with the pullback, depending on the timing of the halt resumption, we're kind of looking at this bull market band here. That does look like it wants to switch to a green bull market band, which is very bullish. Great buying point as well if we can close above a green one. We also have the volume here. So we have this huge volume gap here as well. I think price will move quite quickly between that and then push up. Turning this volume into support would be amazing. The RSI got some room to the upside. The MACD Plus certainly looks like it wants to flip to a more bullish look with a golden cross. We had the oversold as well, which is nice. The flow is kind of neutral with a little pop-up, but again, things are kind of thrown off by this T12 halt, so we need to be patient and wait for that. Other than that, though, my kind of targets on CleanSpark, we talk about this all the time. CleanSpark's final price for this bull market will depend on what Bitcoin does. It's going to be a roughly, I think, 2 to 3x multiplier. It's very hard to value these mining companies and proxy trades in a traditional manner. We have to consider what's happening with the underlying asset and value it kind of off that. So with that in mind, my price target for Bitcoin is kind of 120 to 240. I know it's a big range, but if we get to the low of that range, I would expect kind of CleanSpark to be worth maybe $50, $60, something like that. That said, I'm not going to hold all of my position till then. I'm going to de-risk as it starts moving up into that price area. But at a certain point, I'm going to be all out. We'll talk more about that when we get near to that point in the cycle, but we're a ways off that. If I keep talking about that in every video, it'll be a very long video every week. What else did I want to talk about? I think that's it. We'll take a quick look at the weekly. Loving the weekly, still looks really, really good. RSI is kind of neutral, could go either way. We look like we're chopping around. Looks like it wants to confirm a golden cross, and flow looks like it wants to go bullish as well with the golden bar. If we get a couple more golden bars, that'll make me super happy. Volume's coming back again. Looks good. Very happy. Open options interest on this one still looks fairly bullish. The expectation's quite high for some upside. Again, a lot of people picking out this $15 range for their strikes. We looked at that on the charts, and we had confluence there, so we agree with that as well. It's always good to know we're in line with the bigger funds, where the big fish swim. So that gives us some confidence as well. There's not really much to the downside, but good support at $8. I'd be shocked if we ever got back down to $8, but I would totally buy that if that happened before the bull market finished. Of course, out another week. A lot of people sitting in the money on this one. The fact then they're still in there makes me pretty confident that they're happy with their positions and expecting more upside. Again, we're starting to see targets rise. It's a bit laggy. I mean, 22.5 is probably not going to hit next week. That's probably wishful thinking. But let's go to January 2026, as that's as far out as we'll push CleanSpark Options, because having a strike for January 2026 is probably quite risky. So yeah, market still looks really bullish on this one. If we pull this down, doesn't quite go as high as what my kind of targets are, but definitely a lot of upside in the market on this one. So then the T12 halt that everyone was fudding about, and then we had 50% of people fudding, and the other 50% being it's going to the moon. They've been bought out by Mara. That's ridiculous. So it looks like what caused this was the CleanSpark warrants. They kind of went up like 9x in 3 days, which is crazy. The underlying stock just didn't move with it. Few red flags. The rumor mill kicked in. There is zero chance that CleanSpark would sell in this bull market. They are sitting on a golden goose. A company would have to pay out the wazoo to acquire them at this point. It'd be better to wait until the bear market or something like that. Every cycle has a different prime proxy. This cycle it's CleanSpark. It might not be the next cycle. They might have difficulties, but we have to wait years to find that out. Other than that, though, so a T12 is normally related to mergers and acquisitions, but it's sometimes kind of paperwork issues, and it seems to have been the latter case, although arguably it's still to do with an acquisition. It's to do with the warrants and the grid acquisition that they had. I've just put up the kind of news release from CleanSpark. If you want to read it through there, they clarify exactly what's happened. It was an erroneously applied exchange ratio to the warrant documentation, I think. Yep. And then the NASDAQ questioned that on the Friday. They submitted the correction on Friday. We are still halted during pre-market. I don't know if they're going to resume trading into the open. We'll have to wait and see. It shouldn't take too long for such a minor issue that they're just checking. But I did have a lot of people question about this. I tried to comment back to as many people on eToro as I could. But yeah, we'd had a lot of acquisitions recently, so it was most likely going to be related to one of those. But there was zero chance of CleanSpark spelling. If you were running CleanSpark right now, would you want to sell? The deal would have to be crazy for them to agree to it. So yeah, I think that clarifies the situation. It's just a waiting game, hopefully a couple of days at most. So Bitcoin, the underlying asset for CleanSpark, we've been talking about this for weeks, that when we had a pop, we'd rip quite hard and fast, and we have done that. We've had volume coming in. It had so much energy from consolidating all the way back here in March, I think it was, something like that. Last week we also talked about it hitting 80k pretty fast, because that's just kind of the levels we're looking at, and it has done exactly that. We are now getting into kind of the sticky area. We've got this fib, and we've had such a large move. The RSI is getting overheated. We're getting a lot of kind of toppy signals. That doesn't necessarily mean we have to roll over here. We could continue up. It just means the risk reward is kind of shifting in favor of the risk side at the moment. We talked as well when this happened, the proxy trades were going to pop really aggressively. So we've seen that in everything. Bitfarm, Mara, Coin, I think has done really well. MicroStrategy, obviously, annoyingly, CleanSpark hasn't participated, but we carry on. So support-wise on this one now, we're kind of looking at that 74k area as, that's going to hold us up quite well. We do have a very strong shelf there. And then below that, we have this even better shelf at 67. I don't see us falling back down to 67 or possibly even that kind of 74 range, purely because the macro environment shifted with a much stronger bullish tilt on this one. With the US now talking about a strategic reserve, a lot of other countries will also want to, hop on the bandwagon, and a lot of other kind of retail sized traders and institutions are going to want to be more bullish on it. So there's a lot of really strong tailwinds on this one. But at the same time, we must also remember it can't go up in a straight line. There needs to be some kind of rest. Market makers also need to hit up the derivatives markets to give liquidity and all that kind of stuff and hedge their risk. So that's always also something to bear in mind. Taking a quick look at the weekly though. Still looks really good. We've got room to the upside. We know Bitcoin can get quite spicy. On the RSI, flow can also stay high for a long time. We can see it back here. We pumped and we stayed high. I did want to also show you, I've been really quite pinpoint accurate with my short-term squiggles. I call them squiggles. They're price action predictions. So I thought I'd take a stab at something a little bit more longer. I don't know if it's it came out a lot more bullish than I was expecting in a much shorter time frame. So bear that in mind. I could be massively wrong on this one. Like I say, normally I only go for like a month or two in terms of price action. This one goes out all the way until May. So that's very forward looking. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. I might have to tweak it though, but we'll see. Economic data doesn't appear to be anything out today, so the party goes on. Tomorrow we do have some not major data. Business optimism is always a good one to keep an eye on. If they're optimistic, generally it's okay. Bunch of Fed speeches. Probably won't listen to those. Yeah, nothing really exciting tomorrow. But Wednesday is a different story. We have the core inflation rate. That one's going to be quite important. The market will pay attention to that. The expectation is kind of for us to hold steady, but for the inflation rate year over year to creep up a little bit. That's possible. Yeah, I can see that. But provided it's not higher than this, the market will probably swing in some downside if that happens. But I think everyone's quite optimistic on the economy. There's just a lot to play out. We won't know exactly how the tariffs and kind of stuff will play out. It's a ball in the air situation at the moment. But I think long-term things will be okay. That's a wrap. If you enjoyed this content, give it a like, share with your mum, your nan, your dad, your dog, and I will see you tomorrow for Tesla Tuesday. That's probably going to be an exciting one as well.